race fans? I'm Ryan Eho, and we have the one and only Bert Lehman with us. Bert, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Got all the toys delivered for the Toys for Tots, so I'm a little more stress-free this week than I was last week.
Hey, it's a good cause, though. That was a good cause, so congratulations on doing that. We're going to be bringing you episode number 111, of course, brought to you by our friends over at Dirt Track Supply in Watertown, South Dakota. I want to thank Ron and Trevor for their continued support of us and also of Dirt Track Racing. You know, they help a lot of people out over there. They have for a lot of years. If you need parts, you need stuff worked on, you need a new chassis, they got the Aero chassis. If you need safety equipment, my buddy Keith, he bought a racing suit. I asked him, Bert, I said, do they make them pear-shaped? Can you get them there pear-shaped? And he's like, he kind of gave me the bird on that one. I'm like, I think that's what I would need too. So don't feel so bad, but they'll take good care of you. So thanks to them. But let's start with something fun. Laundry list of drivers on this one. Some pretty cool stories too. But a blast to the past, of course, brought to you, Bert, by Impact Health Sharing. If you're a business owner out there, or you're paying for your own health care and you're paying too much, I might be able to help you. Been cutting it in half for a lot of people. Just shoot me a message, give me a call. I can run you a free quote, and it's been a great program out there. So keep some of that hard-earned money in your pocket and spend it on race car stuff, because that's a whole lot more fun. So number 111. Okay, now we have 111s and we have 11s. I have a few 111s. Do you have any 111s on your list there, Bert?
I actually have a couple of 111s.
Oh.
One, I think I have the correct first name, but I apologize if I have it wrong. But Wayne Westfall, he raced at Shawano Speedway in the early 80s. I really don't remember too much about him, but I remember seeing the picture of his car in the paper, and the fact that his number was 3 digits, always intrigued me, and it kind of drew my attention to his car. So that's, I'm pretty happy I'm actually able to have a 111. Normally I don't have a driver. But my other 111 is a very familiar face, National Late Model Hall of Famer. 111 is typically not his number, though.
You want me to guess this one? Because I got it down on my list, too. You're talking about the legendary Pete Parker.
Correct. When he drove the Tri-City Buggy house car, he moved down to Illinois for at least one summer and raced the house car. So, yeah, 111, Pete Parker.
So let's talk about that 111, because he only ran that for a year, right? Because he's been number
I believe so.
He probably had another number or two in there. But the owner of that was Gary Oliver. Okay, now, Gary Oliver had Tri-City Buggy. He had that. I guess the guys won a bunch of racing. Sound like he did some promoting as well. But let me ask you this. The Oliver last name, late model driver, not 111, but number 11. Does something come to mind there?
No, I'm John
Oliver. Chrissy Oliver. So Chrissy Oliver ran a yellow number 11. I think it said Yellow Jacket on the side of the car. She did that for a few years. She was up at Cedar Lake. Puka would remember this, because I believe he was at the USA Nationals when she was up there. But I'm about 99.9% positive that Gary Oliver is her dad. So kind of a full circle there. So she ran the 11, Gary Oliver in the 111. I don't remember that. I did see pictures online of Pete Parker driving that Tri-City Buggy car. But another story of the 111 kind of tied into Gary Oliver, a guy from up in northern Minnesota, won a bunch of races back in the super stocks. I guess it would have been, I believe, in the late 80s around that time, kind of getting into the very, very early 90s it got into. But Tim Niska. Now, we talk about Pete, right? We talk about Keith, and we talk about Jeff. They're all, they kind of give us some info once in a while. Well, Tim Niska is actually the uncle to Keith and to Jeff. Okay? So kind of all tied in there. And he had a 111. Now, he bought this car from a Hibbing guy, Doug Scott, and there's kind of a funny story on it. So, first of all, he decided, I'm going to go with a triple-digit number. And according to Pete, who got me this info, he said the Iron Range Racing Association up in Hibbing used to have a rule that you could not have triple digit numbers, right? And you weren't supposed to have a letter in your number at one point in time either. So I was 71A, you know, Don Oz was A1. He was legendary Hall of Famer up in Hibbing. And he said, well, here's the deal. We're going to rock the boat. So he had 111, and the first one was O-N-E, but it was shaped like a 1. So he had 111 that way, but he made payments on this car. So all of you broke racers watching this, okay, here's a little story for you. He was making payments on this car, rolled it over, destroyed the car. It looks like pictures show that he tore the rear end out of the car, and it still wasn't paid for. So he's here still paying payments on a race car that's destroyed, and it's like, that's racing right there. That's just how that works. That's just how that works. So Tim Nisko was also a number 11. He went on to win a bunch of races. You know, maybe had a little altercation with my dad in there. Jeff sees it differently than I see it. I remember my dad, I believe, hitting the tires in the back straightaway. I'm putting that all on Tim Niska, but all in good fun. That was a long time ago. I think that was like 1990 when that happened. Now, super stock guy that I raced against, let's just say this, my pit guy tried chasing him out of the pits and like literally wanted to chase him down and give him a beat down, okay? Bruce Torvill over in Wisconsin, this guy, he was a hard charger. He raced over, I guess, in Jim Falls. He came up to Superior, so I ran against him quite often. He ran hard, not afraid of contact. Fit in perfectly with the super stock division, was not afraid to ruffle some feathers. And Jim Zembo Memorial, I was actually battling for the lead, and he got into me, ended up cutting a tire on it. We may have had some words after that one. That was one of the bigger paying super stock races back in the day. And his kid, you might have seen him at the Little Dream, Keith Torvill, another very talented racer. He went on to race. He's just very part-time now, but like father, like son, kind of a rolling pinball, right? I think he hit every single car on the racetrack except for the pace car at the Little Dream. But I think that kind of went hand in hand. There was so much carnage. Remember that this year? Man, it was like a battle royale. But Keith Torvill, and I got this one from the folks up at the Devil's Lake Speedway. They said, hey, we got a guy up here, Jason Halverson. He runs a Midwest mod up in North Dakota. He runs Devil's Lake. He runs Jamestown. Not sure if he gets over to Grand Forks. I don't know much about him. And now, here's one for you. Who owns Vado Speedway?
I don't know.
Okay, perfect. So his kid is number 111, Bumper Jones. Not sure if you ever heard that. You're a late model guy. You probably don't know that name, right? But Bumper Jones. So Royal Jones owns Vado Speedway down in New Mexico, where they're going to have the Wild West Shootout. And he actually was 131. I think he was 131. And his daughter, Holly Jones, it was 131, 121, and 111. And I made some laps against some guys when I went down south, but let's just say they got cubic money, right? They don't have one toter home, Bert. They got like 3 of them. I mean, it's just insane. But he owns several businesses down there. They sponsor a lot of race cars, but Bumper's still getting it done. I saw him win a race actually on FYE.TV earlier this year. So that's it for the 111s. Okay, that's a bunch of them right there. But a little fun here. We got a pile of 11s, and we got to give a shout out. I'll let you start, Bert. Who do you have for number 11 that sticks out?
I have a couple of them. One is Jeff Curtin. He's from Shawano. He was actually the one who was instrumental in bringing fast track late models up to Northeast Wisconsin, which, lasted for several years before the tracks dropped that class. But he's raced sportsman cars at Shawano Speedway. He's raced in fast track late models. He's raced regular late models. The last several years, I'm having drawn a blank on the first name, but Reed drove his car in the Dirt King series, and then they followed some of the MLRA Lucas Oil series this past year. But I had heard that he had everything for sale and was selling it, so he must be getting out of racing. But I have 2 of his die casts right here, so
nice.
So yeah, because I'd make die cast for him every year. He'd give them to his sponsors and stuff. So that was, he was a good customer of mine.
There you go. There you go.
And then the other one, I believe his first name is Steve, but Steve Schneider. He raced late models at Shawano Speedway in the early 1980s. He was Rookie of the Year in the early 80s. And now he is the owner of Right Foot Performance racing parts in eastern Wisconsin.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. So still heavily involved with the sport. So I got a quiz for you right here. 1988 Wissota Late Model National Champion.
And it's an 11? 88? Okay, that would be before Doors time.
That would be before Pat Doors time. I'll give you a clue.
Just before you give me a clue, I mean, McMahon?
It was McMahon. You got her on the. There you go. So Tim McMahon, of course, he's still racing. He's still getting her done. Buzzy Adams is married, of course, to his daughter Megan, and his other daughter is actually getting married to Rodney Sanders. Okay, so kind of there's going to be a whole lot of good racing genes in all of them families. Okay, so the grandkids will be genetically. They'll be set to race cars. Let's just put it that way. But Tim McMahon, one of my favorite drivers, but probably my favorite driver as a kid growing up, or one of my very favorite drivers, was his late brother, Dan McMahon. And Danny ran a modified. He ran super stocks, actually ran for Mark Royney and Bob Royney in the super. He ran late models. He ran for Dick Chrisman in the late model. And he was a legend. And he was one of those guys, Bert, that as a kid growing up, I mean, he could be completely just mad at something that went wrong, but the kids would come over to his hauler and he would drop everything he had and he would take time for all the kids. And he was just that kind of guy. And won a lot of races. I remember a violent rollover at the Silver 1000, I believe. Broke a wheel on the right rear and just sent his car catapulting when he was driving the 89 for Dick Chrisman. I think Chrisman owned that car. There was some people involved with it, and tragically lost his life in a snowmobile accident. And he was pretty young at the time. It was a tough deal for all the race fans up in the Northland. So, tip of the cap to the McMahon family. We talked about Tim Niska. Well, we talk about Pete on here once in a while. He gives us some info. Pete Niska was number 11 as well. He ran a super stock, had a yellow car, yellow and green for a while. Then he transitioned into the modifieds, changed over to number 1. And he gave me a different reason why he was number 1, but he was always really good at the sponsorship side, the marketing side. So in my mind, or at least I thought, that he put a number 1 on there to make more room for the sponsors. But he gave me a little different story, but that one makes more sense. But Pete Niska, Tim Niska, the Niska family, been around for a long time up north. Another guy down from Downsville, Wisconsin, Menominee car, super stock, ran a mod as well. Probably some of the sharpest looking race cars, Bert, that I've seen, like through the late 90s up through the 2000s. Steve Wick. He was a really, really good driver, really good looking equipment. Now, a Chisholm native, literally lived less than a mile down the road from me, kind of a guy that, I looked up to growing up as a kid, helped me out quite a bit. But Gary Taylor, back in the 6-cylinders, did they ever have any Gremlins? Them little hatchback Gremlin cars? Mm-hmm. Did any of them ever race up in your area?
Not in a racing division, but there was one that would race during the street eliminators.
Okay.
It was a purple Gremlin. I mean, it was really souped up, painted nice, and it was pretty quick too.
Yeah, Gary had some Gremlins. Of course, he had Camaros, and he had several other cars. But I remember him in some of those Gremlins. I'm like, man, them things are just god awful looking. They don't even look like a race car. It should be illegal because they were so unbelievably ugly. But that thing got around the track pretty quick. Now we'll switch over to another one. Another late model national champ, 1989, Wissota late model national champion. I
don't know.
He also won the 1992, 94, and 2005 Wissota Championship Sprint Car national champion. He's still racing today. I'm going to give you one more clue. Remember that incident this year at the Wissota 100 during the big parade of champions where the car broke on the front straightaway and it stacked all the late models up? Remember that deal?
Yeah.
And it was number X, right? Chuck Swenson.
Oh, okay.
Chuck Swenson. So South Dakota guy. You said you don't know many South Dakota guys.
Yeah, I don't know many South Dakota
Little
guys.
history lesson there for you. I'm going to give you another one here. You should be able to get this one. All right? 2 of his sons now race late models. One of them announced he's following the World of Outlaws, or intends to, in 2022.
Oh, Gundaker?
There you go, Kevin Gundaker, the old Orange 11 ride. And, of course, they promote, over in Pontoon Beach, Illinois, Tri-City by Granite City. They promote that. Did the dirt work. He did the dirt work on the track for the Dome as well. Another guy, you wouldn't know this guy. Honestly, don't know much about him. I just remember he had a pretty cool-looking car. The 11 of Mike Jasperson. He was a late model guy. You remember that name at all? I think he's from the Twin Cities. He came up to Labor Day a time or two. Now, 2002, Wissota late model, national champion.
Is this Pat Dorr?
The Double One Express, Pat Dorr, who arguably had maybe one of the best seasons he's had in a long time this year. Just ultra consistent. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Superstock guy, this guy took some time off, raced against him, had a TRC car back in the day. I think he's back in one, runs over at the Cedar Lake Speedway. The 11X of Jason Schill, got some good memories racing with him. Another late model guy, you would not know him, but he's from the North Dakota area. I think he's from North Dakota, but back in the 90s, he would make a trip or two over to the Hibbing Raceway, doing some farming up there. Darren Engelstad, a guy from up in the North Dakota region. Brian Mickinen is a guy that rings a bell. I think that JW Zembo Classic where I got a flat, I feel like Mickinen maybe won that one. I'm not positive. I think he won one of those. And then another buddy of mine, I talked about this guy. I really heard from him in ever and ever. I actually put a body on his race car once, Slade Storts. And of course, my buddy Jeff, that's gives us some info. He knows all the Storts family very well. Got to give a shout out to the 2021 Wissota Superstock track champion at the Hibbing Raceway, Kevin Saline, been doing it for a long time. 1998 Wissota Modified Labor Day Shootout feature winner over at the Hibbing Raceway. Rich Loftus made the trip up from Wisconsin in the 11X. Now, this one might be tough. You might get this one. He's won features in 6 different decades. He's been president and heavily involved with the NLRA Late Model Series. His number is now T1. Tom Corcoran. So there's a guy who's had multiple different numbers. 11 was one of them. And then I'll give you one more. Green.
His car or last name?
Legendary car. Lots of them were green. 20-time king of the Outlaws.
Oh, Kinzer. I was thinking late models.
There you go. I throw a curveball at you. Steve Kinzer. Now, the next one here, I got the notes. You're going to have to bear with me on this one. He gave me the notes for this one to give his clues, okay? He raced for about 25 years. He was a president of a racetrack. He was a tech guy. He built engines. He has literally the best looking former national champion for a son ever. His son actually won 5 Wissota Superstock national titles. His son is co-hosting with Bert on the show. So my dad, Rudy Aho, he actually had several different numbers. One of them was number 11, so I'll post some pictures up of that, but that's before my time. I don't remember those number 11s, but I do have the pictures of them, so we'll put that up. So That was my dad. I was not saying that best looking deal. My dad said that, so that came from him. So Bert, that was kind of fun. I like kind of going back in memory lane, but kind of that time of the year. Let's talk about the 2021 season, right? The top stories of 2021 brought to you by your friends over at Blue Line Brews. If you're a coffee drinker, bluelinebrews.com. Money, everything that they do, money goes back to the families of fallen officers, to the families of injured officers. You know, they give back to those who support us. And I want to thank them a lot for everything they do supporting the show and wish them a Merry Christmas over at Blue Line Brews. Well, let's start with this. You know, let's go right for the jugular right away. In your mind, what are a couple of the top stories? If you look back 10 years from now, right? And you're like, remember back in 2021, right? What are a couple things that stick out to Bert Lehman?
Well, I think the season that Brendan Overton had, I mean, there's going to be a lot more high-paying races next year. So the odds of a driver being, or let's rephrase it, the chances of a driver, the opportunity for a driver to win as much money as he did this year will be there because of all the more high-paying events. But the season that he put together this year, and especially his Dream Week, where he won, you know, both the features at Eldora Speedway, and as far as top stories, also just the fact that Eldora Speedway had double Dreams, double World 100s, you know, that's a story by itself that people will look back on.
And my buddy Keith would be like, they had double King Royal too, right? So we got to give love to the sprint car guys as well. But I was surprised, right? Because that's a lot of money on the line for what they put out on the table there. So that was pretty epic. And, you know, just talking about money shows in general, you know, they added in some late model stuff here this past year. But to close out 2021, the schedules that came out for 2022, wow. All I can say is, you know, you can look back at it is maybe the transition year where national late model racing elevated the game and really just put a ton of money backing behind it to go back into the hands of the drivers. It's going to be really interesting in 2022 to see how that works out. Speaking of late models, this could be maybe the last year, right, for the legendary Scott Bloomquist. The first year that he hasn't won a feature race. Never thought I'd see that happen. A lot of people stick around a little longer than they should, but, you know, a lot of people are going to remember him for what he did this year, which was nothing. You know, you have them young fans coming in and they're like, Scott Bloomquist, who the heck is this guy? And it's like, do your homework. This guy is one of the best ever to strap into a late model. And is his time over, Bert?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, every driver's time is over eventually. I mean, you just can't beat Father Time. But I think the end of his career, I think, was accelerated by that dirt bike accident that he was in. You know, he hasn't talked about it a whole lot, but he's talked about it some. You know, I mean, he's been in interviews where he said, you know, there's times when he's racing and he can't feel his leg. And I don't know. I mean, you would think, I mean, I've never raced other than, you know, just a few celebrity races or whatnot. But I mean, you know, working the throttle and working the brake, and well, especially throttle control. I mean, if you can't actually feel your leg, I would assume that's quite difficult then.
Yeah, that's not going to work out real good. And hopefully his health gets back in order. I mean, let's be honest. He has not taken really good care of himself, right? I mean, he's kind of had a little bit of a rough lifestyle. That accident, of course, hurt that more.
He's lived his best life.
he absolutely has. But, you know, I tell you, a lot of people that are on top of the game and whatever they do, whether it's racing or the NFL or whatever, when they hit that transition part of life of where they can't do that anymore, they got to find purpose. And looking back at Scott Bloomquist, I mean, You see, he's a self-destructive kind of person with gambling and the addiction problems and all the stuff that he's had going on. A guy kind of hopes that he finds something to fill the void, right? Because if he's not pouring into racing, he's got to find something positive to do. Let's just put it that way. And I hope he does. So, and I'm pretty sure he'll be back. I haven't seen no announcement stuff. I'm sure he'll be back racing next year.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he'll be back racing, but, you know.
Over and under, Bert. 2 wins for Scott Bloomquist in 22.
I'm going to take the under.
I'm taking the over. I'm taking the over because I guarantee right now, right? He mentioned it when they interviewed him. This could be the first time that he can remember that he hasn't won a feature. A competitive guy like him, he will find a way to win more than 2 features. And I'm not saying it's going to be the World 100 or anything like that, but he's going to win at least 2 features in 2022. Write that down.
Well, I mean, I hope he does. I mean, I'm not necessarily a huge Bloomquist fan, but, I mean, it's between him and Billy Moyer as to who the greatest of all time is. I mean, you can make a case for each of them. So
yeah, that's a fact. Now, regionally speaking, right? In our area, the Wissota Late Model Challenge Series has been around for a long time, and it fizzled. They had 4 cars follow the series, a lot of disconnect. The drivers are talking, probably not following it. Whoever takes that over, if anybody does, is going to have some work to do to rebuild that up. I'm looking at 2021 as maybe the last year, or maybe the year the Challenge Series just took its final breath, because they're going to have to do something to make that better on a regional level. But we talk about Scott Bloomquist. We talk about Billy Moyer as being 2 of the best ever. Here's a guy that's probably the story of 2021, Young Money Kyle Larson. From the outhouse, booted out of NASCAR a year ago, and he come in this year. When he strapped into the dirt stuff last year, that was unbelievable what he was able to do behind the wheel of dirt cars. But this year, Bert, in 2021, the Chili Bowl, the Prairie Dirt Classic, the Knoxville Nationals, and NASCAR champion. Unbelievable from where he was a year and a half ago. Just imagine, right, in his mind, the day he got notified that your ride is done. You're fired, effective immediately. Imagine the feeling that went through, I can't even imagine what went through his mind when he got that phone call and was notified that it was over, right? So at that time, do you think he pictured over the next year and a half, 2 years, what his life would look like? Do you think that was even something that registered? How long do you think it took before he was going I'm in trouble here, or I found something different to do? That's just crazy. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think when he lost his NASCAR ride, it was definitely, I mean, I'm sure it was in the back of his mind as to whether he would ever race a NASCAR again. Not because he didn't have the talent to race, because he definitely had the talent. But in today's world, talent isn't everything. And especially with NASCAR, they're so politically correct. There's, it had to cross his mind that, that a team owner wouldn't take a chance on him again, because team owners have to have to secure sponsorship to put these rides up. And if a big time sponsor doesn't want to put their name on his car because of what happened in the past, he wouldn't race again in NASCAR.
Yeah, that's a fact. And I heard some rumors going around. Of course, Tony Stewart's partnered up with Ford, right? I believe it's Ford. And I was told, I don't know, somebody might have to do some research on this, but I was under the understanding that he wanted to sign Kyle Larson, and Ford told him that ain't happening. We'll drop your backing. You're not allowed to sign Kyle Larson.
Yeah, I've read that too. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but yes, I've heard that also. And because, I mean, when Larson was looking for the ride again after a year, I mean, I'm sure everybody in the dirt world thought that he would go race for Tony Stewart because, with the dirt connections.
Yeah, well, Tony Stewart's extremely politically correct, so I can see that. Said nobody ever. I mean, they think that Kyle Larson maybe said a couple wrong things, Tony Stewart was the king of saying like soundbite type stuff. So that would have been a perfect fit for sure, but it sure worked out for Kyle Larson. So you look back at 2021, that's probably one of the biggest stories. But on a dirt level, one more story that really sticks out is just the overall part shortage, but primarily with tires, right? That huge tire shortage and having rules in place where they can only use 4 tires for the whole night and a lot of different stuff like that where, certain places, the only, like in Wissota at the end of the year, you had to be a vendor that sold tires at the track to even get tires from Hoosier, and they're looking at 2022 and not being a whole lot different. So, with parts shortages comes increased prices, right? That's just how it works, right? Supply and demand. And now the price is going through the roof. They're talking fuel prices, Bert. I don't know if you saw this, but VP posted something and they got it up to their vendors that they could actually see a 100% increase in racing gas by the end of 2022. Unbelievable. I mean, they're already paying like for 110, it's $9 a gallon, kind of on average is kind of what it's at. Well, $18 a gallon, Bert, by the time they get done with one night, a lot of guys gals and guys won't even make enough money to start the feature to cover what they paid for in race gas. So I think we're in a tough spot right now because number one, it's hard to get things, but number two, you're going to have to pay out the nose to get them, and the tracks can't raise purses because there's only so much revenue to go around. So some things are going to have to change. Possibly looking at maybe shorter laps. Can you see them? Going instead of 30 laps and 40 laps at local regional specials, going to just, hey, we're going to do 20 laps or 25 just to try to save everybody money. Do you think that's something that we could see in 2022?
Well, I mean, it's possible. I mean, if fuel goes up 100%, I mean, that's ridiculous. Unfortunately, the people in charge, I'm going to get a little political here. The people in charge of the country don't care because they really don't care about racing. So, I mean, actually, they're in favor of higher stuff because then they think that it'll cause people to stop doing it because they don't necessarily believe in it. But one thing to remember, too, is next year is an election year. So we'll see how that plays into everything.
Well, do you see what's going on in California? So in California, they have banned the sale of small gas-powered stuff, right? Like you can't buy a gas-powered generator, a lawnmower, a weed whacker, a pressure washer. Like you can't buy it, right? Yeah. Now, what does every race car driver take to the racetrack with them? A gas-powered generator. Everybody's got one, right? A lot of them have gas-powered pressure washers. A lot of dirt racing in California. Now, you can still, at this time, you can still use that stuff, but if they're banning the sale of all that stuff, is the writing on the wall that eventually the Yahoos over in California are just going to ban the use of all that stuff in the state of California as well?
Oh, I think that's definitely the direction that it's headed. I mean, there's a push in this country, and that's what some of this legislation that they're trying to pass is. They want to be carbon neutral by 2050 or something. And I mean, anybody who believes that we can be carbon neutral, that we can run a country on just wind and solar, I mean, you're fooling yourselves. I mean, it's going to be some cold, dark days in the winter in the Midwest because there's no way you're going to heat your house with just wind and solar. I mean, I agree. You need to have an energy plan that incorporates wind and solar but I mean, you need a combination of all of the above, not one or the other.
Yeah. So racers, race fans, pay attention to what's going on. I'm not telling you which way to vote. That's up to you. All I'm saying is do your research, pay attention because the sport we love could be in trouble if we don't pay attention to what's going on here. So let's get into the best races in your mind. It doesn't have to be one. You might have a couple that stick out. But we watched a lot of racing this year. A lot. We watched a lot of racing. Is there a couple that stick out to you as like, that was a performance? That was a race? What sticks out to you?
Well, on the national scene, I'm going to go with the Dirt Track World Championship, the one that RTJ won. He was battling with Superman and Overton, two of the best drivers this year, and the young rookie comes through and, beats both of them. We talked a lot on the show that RTJ kind of struggled mid-year. And we debated on how much this win would help him. And I think it'll be a huge boost to him going into next year.
Yeah, I totally agree. How about on a local or regional level?
On a local level, I'm going to go with the Punky Manor. AJ Demo and Jimmy Mars had a really good battle. You don't see those two drivers bouncing off the wall like they did a little bit in that race. And then I'm drawing a name blank again. Kennedy, the Sport Mod, Swann, and to have somebody that young win a race, and it's just good to see. And I've seen several interviews with her afterwards. I mean, she's really getting a lot of publicity for winning that race, which is deserved. Yep. Which is deserved.
For sure. So I got a few that stick out to me on a national level. I'm going to go all the way back to the Wild West Shootout. Remember that one race during the week where they actually watered the racetrack? Remember that, right? Because some of them, it was not real good. But remember that race between RTJ Turbo and Jonathan Davenport? Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were chucking sliders over and over and over. I'm like, that one right there has the potential to be a race of the year candidate. And just too bad. I mean, their racing is done. There's no more racing there at that facility in Arizona. It is now moving over to Vado, New Mexico. So that's coming up here just a couple weeks away. Now, on a local regional level, number 3 would be a Steffes Street Stock Tour opening night race over at the I-94 Sure Step Speedway. Eventual champ and national champ Parker Anderson outdueled Ryan Satter to get that one done, and that was absolutely epic. Slide jobs, and I mean, it was a hell of a race, and just a way to kind of set the stage for the season for the Steffes Street Stock Tour. And at number 2, Sobraski fans, I'm sorry. Okay, I am. I'm sorry. I apologize for this, but one of the best races of the year, Dan Ebert stealing one in the final corner from Shane Sobraski to win the Fall Classic, and that was an on-your-feet moment. I mean, it was spectacular fashion getting it done, and really there was that race and one more left at the end of the year. If Sobraski wins either, he's a national champion. So that last corner pass by Dan Ebert effectively give Tyler Peterson the national championship for 2021. So, but that was a hell of a race. Exciting finish there at the Big O in Ogilvie. And at number 1, my buddy Johnny Broking, 26th to 2nd at the Wissota 100 over at the I-94 Sure Step Speedway. They watered the track probably too much because they didn't need to. It was late. Like literally it was like 1 o'clock in the morning when the race started. I'm like, I'm going to stay up with this mods. I'm going to watch it. I'm glad I did because he was literally one bobble, Bert, at the end of that race. Just one little bobble from going from 26th to win that. Like he chased down Dan Ebert and he was absolutely impressive. So 26th to 2nd for Johnny Broking. That was a fantastic race. How about finishes? I got one for me that literally sticks out, but do you have one in your mind that is like the best finish of 2021?
I took this category a little bit different. I wasn't thinking of just one race. So if you want to talk about your race first, then I'll do my thing, or however you want to do it.
Well, why don't you go ahead and go first? Okay. Best finish could be the finish to a season too. So I put best finish down. So what do you got?
AJ Demo's Invitational Month. I mean, throughout the season, we constantly said, "What's up with AJ? Where is AJ? Why isn't he racing?" And then he came out for Invitational Month, and he just put a whooping on the boys in most of the races that he was in.
He did. The prelude to the John Seitz Memorial, the legendary 100. He won the Red Clay Classic, right? I believe. Yep. Second, he bobbled a couple times, which is not like him, and gave one away at the Punky. But you're right. AJ Demel had a spectacular finish to the 2021 racing season. I'm going to put, I guess, his partner in crime, Jimmy Mars. Day 3 of the Masters, Cedar Lake Speedway. John Canta's got a big lead in the closing laps. And I'm sitting there going, yes, he's one of my favorite drivers of all time. I love me some John Canta. Blue and yellow, it's kind of, I always loved his car combination or his colors. I did that. One of the smoothest drivers to ever strap in a late model. And Jimmy Mars snuck by him, came out of nowhere, charging the high side, totally opposite of what you see Jimmy Mars do. And he got by him coming off of turn 4. And nothing against Jimmy Mars, but I really wanted John Canta to win that one. I'm just saying, but they're all part of the same camp. It is what it is. But that was a hell of a finish over at the Cedar Lake Speedway. Now,
then another finish, I just thought of this one, but Sam Mars winning at Bryce Lake. And, with Jimmy Mars being there. So that was kind of cool. And then seeing him in victory lane, hugging each other.
That was a pretty cool moment right there. That kid's going to be good. I'm telling you what, he's smooth. He's got car control. Obviously, he's got a racing family, grandpa, his dad, so he's got it. So I'm looking forward to 2022 to see what Sam Mars can get done in that late model. Now, clutch performance, the pressure's on the line. Your clutch performer of 2021.
I'm going to go with Brendan Overton, especially Dream Week. It's one thing to win one dream, but then to go he won every race he was in that week, I think, or pretty close to every race that he was in.
Yeah, the Dream Week, I think.
Maybe not.
He might have lost one race in there, but he dominated that whole week for sure.
Yeah. And then, especially with, then they started hearing these news stories about how they were going to check these cars for like 24 hours and whatnot. And Overton said, fine, go ahead. I don't care.
That's right. I forgot that. They were all talking about like he's got traction control, and people were sending me pictures of like satellite dishes. And they're like, I think Overton owns that. Yeah, he put together a spectacular season. And quite honestly, he let a couple slip away at the end of the year. He's battling for, trying to get that million, and he let a couple big ones right there at the end and actually got passed and slipped back to second. But what a hell of a year for Brandon Overton. And I'm going to go on a local level. I'm going to go around regional here. The Nightmare, Lucas Rodin, your 2021 Wissota Midwest Mod National Champion. He was battling with Tony Liker from out in Wyoming. Both of those two phenomenal race car drivers, but it's coming down to the Wissota 100, and how it worked at the 100 is the first 3 nights were all prelim nights, and there was full points. No points, interesting enough, for the main event, for the feature, which I always thought was kind of weird. It's like the main feature. Why would there not be points? It is what it is, though. But they had the prelim nights all had points, and he started 10th on the final prelim night at the Wissota 100. And 15-lap feature, track was a little greasy. They probably watered it a little bit too much there. And he drove to the front, took advantage of a caution late in that one, stormed to the win from 10th, and put himself in position for the national title. And then he went over to the 50th annual Jamestown Stock Car Stampede in Jamestown, and he won both nights there. But here's the kicker. So he's battling. Now I want you to picture this, right? He's battling with Tony Liker for a national championship. Tony Liker, right, is racing before him. So Tony Liker, all of a sudden, Tony Liker wins the feature, jumps into the point lead. Now he's sitting there going, crap, I have to win. Now I have to win. He went out the first night, got by Jason Grimes, got it done. The second night, Tony Liker wins again. I think it was out in Rapid City, South Dakota. All of a sudden, he's looking at it like, I have to win. Last lap pass to get it done on night 2. So just clutch, right? Just clutch moments, and big players come up big moments. I'm telling you.
Another driver who was clutch at the end of the year was Nick Avelink, because in the Dirt King series, entering the final stretch of races, he was in a very tight battle with Ron Berna, and I think was it Swedberg was the other driver, and over the final races, I mean, Nick just pulled away from the rest of the field, and I can't remember how close it was, but I think he won fairly comfortably there at the end.
Yeah, he did. He actually lost the point lead. He fell back to second or third, or whatever, and he had to come back and take charge. So great finish there for him. So how about this? The best regional event of 2021.
For this, I went with Mississippi Thunder Speedway finally getting Outlaws and putting on 2 good nights of racing and bringing them back for next year, and with a bigger and better show planned for next year.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the last lap, but that's exactly what I have down. Mississippi Thunder, absolutely not disappointing. Shout out Brent Larson. That was, he gets second, right? So that was his best finish in the World of Outlaws, right there, basically on almost his home turf. He won a bunch of races in the Super back when it was a tri-oval down there, but we didn't talk about Mississippi Thunder a whole lot this year, but the racing was phenomenal down there. The mod racing and the late model racing on that event, they had USRA mods. All the races were good. They were like highly entertaining. So hats off to the crew down at the Mississippi Thunder Speedway. Looking forward to the 2022 Dairyland Showdown. Now, how about this one? Let's jump over into the best national event. And quite honestly, you could consider that national because it's a World of Outlaws event we just talked about, but it's our area. So we're just going to call that a regional. That's our region. But, you know, take that out of the equation. What was in your mind maybe your top national events from this past year?
I'm going to go with the World 100 week just because it's the World 100. I didn't go this year for a variety of reasons, but normally I go every year, and it's always a special race for me. So I'm going to be a little bit of a homer and take the World 100 week.
That's the most iconic dirt late model race. It's not the best paying one, right? But it's the most iconic one. It's the one that everybody wants, that one. So that's a good one. And it's tough to, compete against the Knoxville Sprint Car Nationals, right? I mean, that's an epic event. That's the one that we got to get down to. I mean, we're starting to follow sprint car racing a little bit more, right? But that event, I mean, the fan count, just the atmosphere. But I'm going to go a different direction, Bert, and I'm going to go with the Gateway Dirt Nationals. And the reason I'm going with that is not because necessarily the racing was great, right? It was more because it's a spectacle. It's different. It's an event. The atmosphere, all the stuff they have going on between races with the interviews and all that different stuff, right? This is a true event, and that just gets me thinking. It's not just a race. It's an event, right? And we're talking about Alltech with the XR series coming up 2022, racing against them. And it's like, well, it's like one's playing checkers and the other one's playing chess. So I'm thinking they're wondering, is it going to affect Gateway? I don't think it's going to affect Gateway at all, to be honest with you, because Alltech, nothing against the XR deal at all, but that's a race. It's $50,000 to win, but it's just a race. Okay. All the races are just a race. This is a spectacle. This is an event. It stands alone. It stands apart from everything else, not because of the racing, but because of all the other stuff. And so the Gateway Dirt Nationals, hats off Cody Sommer for the vision in putting this together. I was very, very excited to be able to go down there this past year. Probably going to do that again next year, but just a great event all in all. Now, let's go with this one next. The best regional track of 2021.
Before I get into the best regional track, I want to make a mention of a track. It was just good seeing Red Cedar Speedway racing in 2021. They weren't allowed to race in 20. I mean, COVID really messed up their season the year before, so it was just good to see them racing. And then eventually, like mid-year or so, get fans in the stands. So that was good to see. But as far as best regional track, to me, Mississippi Thunder Speedway just continues to set the bar for all the other tracks. I mean, what I like about Mississippi Thunder Speedway is they just don't have the same divisions racing there all the time. They bring in the Dirt Kings, they bring in the Outlaws, they have USRA stuff, they have USMTS stuff. They bring in a wide variety of things to draw a wide variety of fans to their facility.
They really do. And they hold themselves accountable. If they aren't happy with a given night, they're very good about saying, hey, look, this one's on us. We want to make it better. So they always have that vision for improvement down there. So that's a good choice. I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to head out to Western Minnesota, the I-94 Sure Step Speedway. Don Shaw, of course, took over that track in 2020. What a great year to take over a racetrack, right? 2020. That had to be some challenges all by itself. But just looking at the specials they do over the year, they have the Dick Johannet King of Dirt, the doubleheader for that. They brought in for the first time ever the World of Outlaw Late Models, the Steffa Street Stock Tour, the Advantage RV Mod Tour, the Rebel Midwest Mod Tour, the Wissota Late Model Structural Buildings, Wissota Late Model Challenge Series. So they got all these events, but just aesthetically, right? And Mississippi Thunder is a beautiful place too. But you walk in to the I-94 Sure Step Speedway and you just look around at that place, it's unbelievable. Like it's kind of like back in the day when all of us went down to Cedar Lake, and just kind of that, like, you get there and you're like, wow, we're somewhere. I mean, it just looks amazing. And the work they do to keep that place just looking top notch. I mean, hats off to the crew, because it's not easy to keep up on that stuff. And that place is flat out incredible as far as the whole facility goes. And then on top of it, the track conditions in 2021 were spectacular, right? Because I remember last year they had a hard time. The track would just get bone dry. It would rubber up. And this year, more often than not, and everybody's got some bad nights. I'm not saying every night was perfect. So if you're a fan goes, man, they had a couple. I'm like, all tracks have a couple nights. But I watched a lot of racing over at Fergus, and there was some highly, highly entertaining races. I remember the Challenge Series race there that I feel like maybe Dave Moss won that one, and Bryce Sword was chasing him down. That was an incredible race. The Steffes Tour races, they had a great modified races there. I mean, unbelievable facility, great racing, big vision. They're looking at expanding on that possibly with some other things in 2022. But, my track of the year regionally, I-94 Sure Step Speedway. So now let's jump over to this one here. There was a couple nights that probably some drivers want to forget. Let's just talk about, in your mind, we saw some pretty nasty wrecks. Is there any that stick out to you as the worst wreck that you saw in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's no question about the worst wreck that I saw, and that was the Brad Miller wreck at Plymouth Dirt Track, where I believe he was leading the feature at the time, or he was in the top three, and he jumped a tire on another car or something, and it sent him barrel rolling down the backstretch, and he came to a rest at the entrance to pit lane. And luckily he was all right. The car, that was a different story, but he was back out there racing later in the year, so it was good to see him get back out there.
Absolutely. That was a violent one. No, I got one real modified here. Dustin Strand, when he took a tumble over at the Norman County Speedway and ate it down the back straightaway, that was another violent one. That was absolutely like, holy cow, hopefully he gets out of the car on that one. And both drivers, I think, were pretty much unscathed, right? So, I mean, you look at the safety equipment between the seat belts and the seats and the roll cages. Of course, Dustin Strand builds his own, right? So that right there. If you're looking at buying a Millennium chassis, look at that rollover and be like, okay, they're obviously safe, right? And, that's the thing, that the safety today compared to 30, 40 years ago, unbelievable. But then were a couple violent ones right there.
Yeah, I believe Miller's car was a MB Customs. And I mean, speaking of MB Customs, I mean, I just thought of this. I mean, Jason Figger had that really bad roll at Eldora.
Yeah.
So that was another bad one.
Yeah, and they've been building cars for a long time too. So, the chassis builders, they've really stepped up their game on safety, and it's a good thing because the cars are a lot faster now than they used to be. So let's talk about this. Drivers that stood out to you. not necessarily, we're not going to do a top driver deal. We got the power rankings coming up here in the weeks to come. We're going to break down the top 25. But who are some drivers that this year just stood out to you in 2021?
I mean, obviously Overton on the national scene, obviously Overton. So we've talked about him a lot, so I'm not going to spend much time on him. But from Eastern, I'm going to talk about two drivers from Eastern Wisconsin. We mentioned Nick Avelink already. I mean, he had 13 wins this year, raced full-time on the Dirt Kings Tour again, and won that championship. So every year that he's raced full-time in that series, on that tour, he's won the championship. And plus he won, it wasn't just, he wasn't just winning in Eastern Wisconsin. He also won a race, a USA National weekend at Cedar Lake. He won one of the local features. So obviously,
jump to the next one there, Bert. Are we gonna jump him up to B minus?
B minus, I think. Yeah.
B minus. All right. So Nick, you're out of that C range. We'll get you up into the B minus range. Right?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe a little fire under him, or.
You need a sticker on the car. Thanks, Bert, for the motivation, because he did. He had a hell of a season for
sure. And the other driver is Benji Lacrosse, racing a modified and a IMCA stock car. I mean, he won 10,000 to win feature in Minnesota in the stock car. Won the 50,000 to win stock car feature at Batesville. Won a couple, and plus he won the $10,000 stock car race at 141 Speedway, and then he won at least 7,000 to win modified show and some other 3,000, 4,000 modified races. So I think it was like over $80,000 in winnings between the two divisions he won. So that's to race, to be a local driver, to win that amount of money is amazing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, we talked a little bit previously about the best races, the best finishes of the year. Fans, jump on to Dirt Race Central's Facebook page, because Ben has been posting 25 down to 1 as far as best races of the season. He's been doing that, I believe, 10 years now or something like that. It's a super cool deal. It's definitely worth kind of following that page just for that. But here's a few drivers, Bert, that stuck out to me. Parker Anderson. Okay, youngest driver to ever become WISSOTA national champion. He was 17 most of the year. I think he was 18 when they crowned him champion. 34 feature wins, 10 Steffes Street Stock Tour wins. He won the WISSOTA 100. He won the Granite City Motor Park Track Championship. He won the Steffes Street Stock Tour Championship. And, of course, he was the WISSOTA Street Stock National Champion. What a hell of a season for Parker Anderson. And, the only thing that eluded him was a little dream. He got bounced around like a ping pong ball at that deal. But I saw a picture on there that said, comeback tour, little dream. So I think he's looking at getting into a mod or B mod. I can't remember which one, but I think he's probably going to run a little street stock racing too. So Parker Anderson, great season for him. We'll stick with the youth for just a minute. Kennedy Swann, 14 years old. She's now 15 after the season. The first female and the youngest driver to ever win the Punky Manor Challenge of Champions over at the Red Cedar Speedway in Menominee. 5 total feature wins on the year for this 14-year-old in the Red Cedar Speedway track champion. Kennedy Swann, I tell you what, a lot of people in their mind, they might be thinking, oh, she just gets all this hype if she's a girl. I've heard the talk, okay? But I'm telling you right now, Bert, 14-year-olds, I don't care if it's a boy or a girl, you don't see that kind of car control. You just don't, right? Like, she knows where to be on the track. She knows how to maneuver. She knows how to get through traffic. Like, she's kind of got that little bit of an it factor as far as behind the wheel. She raced go-karts for many years, so she's not like brand new. But I'm telling you, I don't care if it's a boy, girl, or whatever, 14 years old, getting it done like that, that's impressive.
One thing I've noticed about her too, and I mean, this is the journalist in me talking now, is she's a good interview also. I mean, she's very talkative. She's very articulate. And I mean, I've interviewed young drivers before, and trying to get them to give an answer is like pulling teeth. But I mean, when she's asked the question, she's very knowledgeable, articulate, and a very good interview, and that's going to help her if she wants to advance further in the racing world.
Yeah, she's definitely got it, so she's very marketable. It'll be interesting to see where her career goes. Speaking of somebody that maybe not usually the best interview, my next person, the Double One Express, Pat Dorr, a man of few words. But Bert, 8 wins on the year, including both nights at the Russ Larson Classic at the Northern Nationals, up at the Gondik Law Speedway in Superior, Wisconsin. He won the Fall Classic. I think it's his 3rd straight Fall Classic at Ogilvy. The Can-Am Clash inaugural winner at Superior. He won a Challenge Series race at Rice Lake. But listen to this. From June 24th on, he ran 26 shows, okay? Now, one of them was a World of Outlaw show where he ran it with a Wasota car, got 11th, okay? In that stretch, in 26 races, he had 6 wins, which 4 of them were big invitationals, 11 seconds, and most of them were big invitationals, and 4 thirds. The other one was a Woo show that he got 11th, 15th to 5th at the Silver 1000 in Proctor, 19th to 10th at the Punky was really his only blemish. It was basically his worst finish in that whole stretch, and he got a 4th at Cedar Lake, and then he did have one DNF where he was leading one of the prelim nights at the legendary 100 and had an altercation with a lap car that spun out. So Pat Dorr at the end of the year, like, this dude was not out of the top 3 very often at all. So impressive second half of the season for the 11. And then the last guy that I want to talk about here, the Iron Man, Shane Sobraski. Man, I tell you what, we can talk about his mod stuff. I mean, he came up just barely short. We'll talk about that. But he almost won the national title there. Wasota Superstock National Championship from September 3rd on. Now, if you're a Wasota fan, Bert, that's Labor Day weekend. From that point forward, it's all invitationals. It's all specials. It's not regular night stuff, okay? Listen to this from September 3rd on. 17 shows, 12 wins, 3 seconds, 1 third, 1 sixth. And then at 6th, he started 19th, was a hard charger at the Red Clay Classic. 36 total feature wins on the year. He nipped out Parker Anderson. Parker Anderson had 34 in one class. Shane Sobraski beat him. He had the 36 wins, was the most feature wins by a driver in one class. Now, listen to this. Wasota Classic, he got 2nd. Should have won. I mean, quite honestly, nothing against Terrence Spacek, but probably Terrence should have went to the back in that deal, right? And Shane should have won that. He won the Labor Day shootout. He won Labor Day race at Madison. The KRA Speedway Special he won. Northern Nationals, 1st on day 1, 2nd on day 2. A special at Madison, he got 2nd. The Wasota 100, he won that. Won both nights of the Paul Bunyan Stampede. And then he got the 6th at Red Clay. Probably should have retired after that, but he didn't. And then the Piston Cup, he got it done. Fall Classic 1st, Can-Am Clash 1st, and the Topless 1st. That has to be the most unbelievably dominating performance in the postseason in the history of Wasota racing. That was, I'm telling you, the dude was flat out unbeatable. So what a season for the 7A of Shane Sobraski. And any more drivers that stuck out to you before we get into the next part here?
You didn't mention TPO, or what's his?
Well, Cole Searing and TPO, both of those two, right? TPO had, I'm gonna give them a lot of love in the power shows.
Okay.
But they did, and nothing against them. But I mean, you look at, Cole Searing did. He really did have an outstanding season, national championship, and officially his rookie season. He ran some, quite a bit last year, and he kind of put his money where his mouth was at the end of the year. Performed well at some of the bigger events, and that was kind of the knock on him. Most of the year was like, you're only racing local stuff. You ain't running any of the bigger stuff, and he did, and he performed. He was on the podium. I think he got 3rd over at the sites, and he ran well for 100. So he's going to run a lot more money stuff. And Tyler Peterson in the mod, there's a guy that partway through the season, we were looking at everything, and it's like, Sobraski's got this deal won. It's over. It's over. Like, we'll just talk about the other classes. That one's over. and he came out of nowhere and absolutely was impressive. And then he capped off his championship season by winning at the Dome. So, I mean, he started it out by winning at the Wild West, right? And he bookmarked it on the other end with a win at the Dome. And then, of course, winning the national championship and a bunch of big races at the end of the year. But, I mean, there's a pile of drivers. So if we didn't mention you in this segment, stay tuned, right, for the BuyRacers.com One to Go Show Power Rankings, because that's where we're going to give the top 25. We're going to break down the top 25 in each of those 5 classes, and they're going to get their due in those ones there. So the next segment here is the top Donkey Awards of the year, brought to you by Cowboy Up Racing, Shane Howell. And we had a few maybe ruffled a couple feathers throughout the season, hurting some feelings. That's okay. I ain't scared. Okay. Bert, did any stick out to you? What stuck out to you for the top Donkey Awards of 2021?
I mean, I guess one topic that we discussed quite a bit this year on the podcast is just the inconsistency in the teching. You know, which tracks actually do tech, who gets teched, what are the rules, and that sort of thing.
I'll elaborate on that just a little bit, because I'm going to break down the top 3. And there were several fans, any of these categories, you know, the best moments, the best drivers, all of that. Post in the comments what stuck out to you, what was memorable for you, and including this. What was your favorite Donkey Award? And at number 3, I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I don't care, right? And this was one that kind of stirred the pot and got the ball rolling. But the promoter meltdown at the Challenge Series race at the Granite City Motor Park, when, in my eyes, you know, Mr. James there probably did not handle it the way that I would have, you know. But the fact of the matter is, that cost Travis Budislavich a win, in my mind. Okay, whatever happened in the grandstands, there's a whole meltdown, altercation with the fans. I'm not going to get into he said, she said, whatever, but that was a big moment, because that was when Travis Budislavich made the decision, I'm no longer following the Challenge Series. And if you remember, they only had 4 cars following it, so that moment right there kind of set the stage for the rest of the year. And kind of what, you know, sadly, it was actually a pretty good feature over there that night, but that was one of the bigger ones. So James Frantina's meltdown over at Granite City. At number 2, Bryce Swann getting disqualified for legal parts. Unbelievable. So congratulations, tip of the cap to our very own Bill Engelstad, head tech inspector for WISSOTA. So a little backstory here, if you haven't heard it yet, we talked about it up at the Greenbush Race Park at a NLRA late model event. Bryce Swann was in the top 5. They checked rev chips, okay? They checked the chips. And his came out, initial testing, it tested high. Well, then they tested it multiple times, and it came out right where it should. They sent it to WISSOTA. Billy inspected it, no issue, came out good. He's not going to be suspended, but we still have to disqualify him for that race. What the hell are you talking about? How the hell is that even a thing, right? Furthermore, they go back to that same track, same tech guys, same everything, where one of the drivers in the modified a couple years back had a similar issue where the chip was reading wrong, and they said, well, we got to let him go, okay, because it was a faulty chip. They called it a faulty chip. And in this example here, they called it a possible faulty chip. It read right every single time except for the first time. Unbelievable that the Greenbush Race Park and WISSOTA dropped the ball on this one, disqualifying him for legal parts. Brutal. And at number 1, the whole teching debacle at the Northern Nationals at the Gondik Law Speedway up in Superior, Wisconsin. Night number 1, okay, before the feature event, after the heat races and everything, right? After all that happened, the teching officials there, whether it was the track one, WISSOTA, a combination of both, they went down and they were measuring crossmember height on the modifieds. And initially, they came to the conclusion that there was multiple cars that were illegal. They measured between the lower A-frame bolts and they were loops down. They had that measurement here. Well, they had made a jig. Well, it turns out because it was tipped, the jig was reading wrong, right? So initially, Bert, they told all these drivers that you have to have it fixed and you have to start in the back of the feature, okay? And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Well, Shane Sabraski's like, well, whatever, I'll do what I got to do. They welded a plate on the bottom because he's like, I'll just put it on there. I'm racing for a championship, but most of the drivers didn't have anything to weld. So fast forward to the end of the feature. The end of the feature, they call a whole bunch of cars down into the infield, right? And when they call them all down there, some of the same drivers they said were illegal before the race, they remeasured them and said, well, wait a second. Oh, yours is good. It's like, what if they would have made them start in the back? That would have been a mess. Well, the eventual winner of that race, Johnny Broking, his was, I believe, a 1/4 inch too tall. It was illegal. A rule's a rule. Did not affect him winning the race, but they disqualified him. They had to because they disqualified Dave Kane for a similar deal, if you remember that, earlier in the year. Okay? So Johnny's like, it is what it is. They measured it. It's wrong. It is what it is. Fast forward to night number 2. Night number 2, feature race gets all done. And Jody Belfi ran a brilliant race, slipped by Shane Sabraski to steal the win. Sabraski gets second. After that race, they measured deck height, which had been a big deal, right? Because they disqualified cars at different tracks for deck height. His deck height comes out too high. And I've heard all kinds of stories. Well, there was another couple drivers that were an 1/8 inch too high. And if they disqualified him, they had to disqualify them. Okay, so disqualify him. It's a rule. Again, did this affect it? Did this make him win? No, I don't believe it did, right? I don't believe it had anything to do with him winning that race. But effectively right there, they said, well, we're going to table this to the next day. The track, Bert, gets a hold of WISSOTA. I don't know who, I hear a lot of he said, she said, well, I'm going to put it on WISSOTA. I'm going to put it on the track. I'm going to put it on this. But ultimately, it was a whole breakdown, and they decided right then and there, well, we have a 1/2 inch tolerance, and we're going to effectively let Jody Belfi have the win, which I'm okay with as long as you give Johnny Broking the win for the night before, right? But if you're going to disqualify one, you have to disqualify them both. They don't disqualify him. Shane Sabraski gets second. Now, first of all, that's wrong on a lot of levels, okay? Because it is what it is. Everybody knows Jody Belfi's dad is the tech guy at the Gondikla Speedway. So the perception of everything is terrible, right? It's terrible. The perception is terrible. I don't know who ultimately made the decision. I don't know if it was the promoter, the local tech guy, WISSOTA. I don't know. I keep hearing different stories from whoever you talk to. But ultimately, it was a wrong decision was made, and national titles were implicated because Shane Sabraski should have been awarded the win. He should have gotten the win if you're going by the rule book, right? If he gets the win, that's enough points for Shane Sabraski to be the national champion in 2021. Oh, man, that one would sting. Honestly, that one would sting for a long time. So I'm going to just give that to a combination of the Gondikla Speedway, the promoter, the tech guy, WISSOTA. I don't know. I'm just going to let you all share in the joy. Congratulations. You're the #1 Top Donkey Award of the 2021 season. So, Bert, we had a lot of fun with the Donkey Awards. A few people didn't like them. You know what's kind of funny about the Donkey Awards, Bert? This is true story. I was actually talking to Carson about this at WISSOTA. And yes, I actually talked to Carson at WISSOTA, right? So the fact is, I have promoters from various racetracks that will physically text me and message me, did you see what this track just did? Like, they need a donkey award, right? Like, they're all, everybody that's watching this, y'all know what you're doing, right? Everybody does, okay? And I'm not going to say who it all came from. But then all of a sudden I call that track out for doing something. Well, that's just bad for the sport. You got to get rid of that. I mean, he should not be doing that. Come on, man. If you're one of those promoters that I'm talking about right here, I'm giving you a donkey award for that right now, because that is called being a hypocrite. So if you're going to give donkey awards to other racetracks, you better be able to accept yours as well. That's just kind of the way we roll. So let's jump into our sure bets, Bert, of the week, brought to you by Real Estate by Jay Schmidt over in Watertown, South Dakota. The Schmidt family been involved with dirt track racing for many years. You know, of course, Big Al Schmidt and Jay Schmidt and Trajan Schmidt, they've all raced. They've been around the Watertown Casino Speedway for forever and ever. So if you are a race fan, if you're listening to the show and you need real estate transactions taken care of, whether it's land or it's commercial or residential, it don't matter what it is, your sure bet, get a hold of Jay Schmidt. He'll take good care of you. And 20 years in business, I mean, and 4 racers by racers. So give him a call. Your lock of the week sure bet by Jay Schmidt. Bert, what is your sure bet of the week?
Well, there's not much racing action going on right now. So my sure bet of the week is that my grandkids are going to like their racing Christmas presents.
Nice.
I got this for my granddaughter. It's a hoodie, Bobby Pierce, Scooby-Doo. So, and then for her little brother, I actually ordered the Mario Kart one, but they must have been out of that, so they sent another one, a Bobby Pierce. So they'll kind of be twins, but that's okay.
That's cool. He's one of the fan favorites. He's fun to watch, and he's got unique stuff out there for the kids. That's pretty cool.
I mean, I guess that's one thing that drivers should consider. I know it costs a lot. They have to put up upfront money to buy T-shirts and that sort of thing. But when I was looking for sweatshirts and T-shirts for my grandkids, there's not a lot of drivers that have kid stuff. And Bobby, I mean, whether you like Bobby Pierce or you don't like Bobby Pierce, he makes a lot of money on merchandise, and he has a lot of options for kids' clothing. And you know, that's one thing to. I think that's one thing that drivers need to consider, because if you can get your merchandise on a kid when they're small, they may stay a fan their entire life. So just something to think about when you're ordering, when you're looking to sell merchandise of your race team.
That's pretty cool stuff. So Bobby Pierce, that's Bert Lehman, Lehman. Go ahead and message him on Facebook so you can send him his commission for that good plug that he gave you right there. So spot on, of course, Bert. I agree with you what you said. And you know, I'm going to kind of fast forward a couple weeks. We got Votto coming up, right? The Wild West shootout. Okay. My lock of the week is they're going to have less fans, less cars than they've had in recent years down in Arizona. I still think it's going to be a good show, and I still think they're going to get some good late models. But talking to a lot of people, there's a lot less people excited about going down there than they were going to Arizona because there's so much less to do. So I'm just gonna predict right now that it's going to be a lot less turnout, and I'm hopeful that it goes well because in January we love watching racing, right? So we want to be able to watch a good show. But I have a feeling it's going to be a lot less than what we have seen in recent years. So let's jump into the last lap, brought to you by Zuli's Race Engines. Of course, we talked about Parker Anderson's banner season that he had. Zuli Power right there. This is the time of the year that you need to be getting on the list. Get your stuff taken care of. Get your freshen ups done, right? Get your new stuff coming. And I tell you, they built winners. And if you look at their Facebook page, pretty much every week, all year long, Zuli Power in Victory Lane. So with this said, we'll talk a little bit about late models and about teching and about all that. One of the big things right now, Bert, to come up, I had a conversation with a couple different prominent WISSOTA late model drivers. There's a little bit of drama going on right now, okay? So the drama is this. At the annual rules meeting, they made a rules change for WISSOTA late models. So the 525 crate engine, that's what like Dave Moss, Ryan Michelson had one. Derek Vessel has one, right? Competitive. They win races. They're competitive, right? Well, now they gave the 525 crate 200 extra RPMs, okay? And the spec engine, they took away 300 RPMs. That is a 500 RPM change. Now, I'm going to tell you this, and it's no secret. A lot of late model guys and promoters know One of the guys I spoke to is Pat Dorr. He is on the warpath. He is pissed. It's like, how the hell did this happen? It's like, do they not watch racing? I mean, like, you go to the Wissota 100, Dave Moss was the fastest car on the racetrack. He chased down Jamie Mars, right? He was faster than him at the end. Dave Moss probably should have won the Fall Classic, and bobbled, and Dorr got by him. Derek Vessel was arguably the most consistently fast car in Hibbing and Grand Rapids all year long, right? And now they're giving him another advantage on top of that. He's not happy, right? So he actually took it upon himself to call up several promoters, and they're like, and here was the answer. Well, that's not what got voted on. Or, wait a second, we just thought we gave the 525 more. We didn't know we did this for the spec, right? So now you got all these people going, well, we didn't even really know what we were voting on. So the question, this is an example, Bert, of the whole breakdown in the rules process. All the promoters out there, you hear this all the time. Well, we want to have a say. We want to have a say. We want to have a vote. And I've always felt like if you're a responsible promoter, you should get a say. You should get a vote. But I'm telling you what, it is disgusting. It is sickening how little some of the promoters care, right? Some of them were like, I don't want to deal with it. They don't even go to the meeting. They send somebody else. They don't even show up. They're not even doing their research on the things they're voting on. So I'm going to ask you this. In anything in life, anything, I don't care if it's these rules, politics, or whatever, if you don't have a clue what the hell is even going on, should you even get a say?
Well, I mean, that's the way Wissota is set up, though, because it's a promoters association. But that's why ultimately I think you need one person or, a very small group in charge. But those people have to be knowledgeable of the unintended consequences of things that are being voted on. I mean, you need to know all the pros and the cons to make an intelligent decision.
And that is the problem, right? Because you look at Sam Driggers with UMP. This guy's a toolbox, by the way. I mean, like we talk about Billy with Wissota, right? About him just being like just not professional on so many levels. Some of the stuff that Sam Driggers has posted is like, really? That's like you're representing UMP, and that's the letter that you're going to post for everybody to see? I mean, this guy's a clown, okay? Like that guy. So some of the rules changes he made is just idiotic, and that's the problem. So yeah, you have to have the right people in place making those rules. And I'll tell you right now that Wissota does not. Okay, they do not. Like if you just handed it over to the couple people in charge there, it would be a disaster because they don't know nothing. Okay. But promoters, I'm going to give a donkey award to the promoters that literally just let things kind of just go the way they want. They don't pay any attention. I will say this, for years and years when I was racing, Bert, we would go to the Iron Range Racing Association meetings in Hibbing, and this is when Billy Engelstad was president. Okay, so this is a kudos to Billy and the process, because they would actually take the proposed rules. The tracks would get them emails from Wissota and say, this is what's getting voted on at the meeting, right? They would come back to a monthly meeting for the track, and they would discuss it with all the members so we could all discuss it as an association how the Hibbing Raceway wanted to vote. So they did their homework every single year, and they would go down to the annual meeting and they would vote based on the research that they did. That's how the process is supposed to work. But so many tracks, they just raise their hand. They're sitting there texting. They're not paying attention. They don't even want to be there. Something's got to be done with that rules making process, because this is an example right here. I mean, it don't even make sense. Like, they're already pretty darn even, right? Maybe not at a track like Cedar. But you look at Fergus Falls, that's a fast racetrack, Bert. On the high side, that's a fast racetrack. We're on the I-94 Speedway. Dave Moss was unbelievably fast at the 100. I'm telling you, he was a rocket ship there. He won an NLRA race earlier in the year. I think it was an NLRA. Yeah, he did. He won an NLRA race down there. So it's not like they're at a huge advantage. 500 RPMs is a lot. Now, some chassis builders out there, they don't use a lot of RPMs, but some drivers, they like to bang the chip, right? They like to run a lot of RPMs. They got to fix this. This is something right here. The promoters, the board, y'all got to get together. You need to talk about this. This is something that needs to be addressed because this is a huge mistake. It makes absolutely no sense what they're doing here, and hopefully they can get it fixed. Again, let's talk about Mississippi Thunder. You mentioned that. You kind of gave the fans a little bit of a tidbit. What were you talking about when they said a little bit bigger here in 2022?
Yeah, they're bringing the World of Outlaws late models back again in 2022, and they added a night of racing for them also, and I guess for the last week they've been hinting at this on Facebook, but they are also adding the USMTS mods to that show. So supposedly this is the first time that the World of Outlaw late models and USMTS modifieds have raced together on a weekend at the same show. So that's definitely going to be interesting. You're going to have some of the best in late models and some of the best in modifieds racing there. So they definitely up the ante. They're upping the ante in 2022.
They are. I tell you what, that place right there, they put on some great races. I'm excited for that one. And you better bring some stones because some of them local boys, they know how to get around the high side there at MTS. So if you're looking at that show, like I'm going to come race with these guys, you better bring your marbles with you. That's all I'm going to say. So I want to give a shout out again, Joe Vertigan, the 51032 book. Excited to be getting that. There it is. Bert's got it right in front of him. I talked to my buddy Nick, and he's like, man, that is an outstanding book. And it's super cool to just have somebody in the region say, you know what, there's a lot of history here with these drivers. They've been dirt racing has been part of the area for a long time. And if you're a dirt historian, you've heard of them guys. I mean, we all know MJ McBride and, of course, Terry Avelink and the one and only Pete Parker. There's some pretty cool stories in there about them guys. It'd be definitely worth a read. And with that said, Bert, we're going to take a week off next week.
Okay.
Holiday week coming up. I'm going to do the power ranking stuff. I can't promise it'll be out next week. It might be right after the first of the year. Maybe I'll throw one out here this week. We'll see how much time I have. But I just want to say this, it's Christmas week. I hope all of our fans and listeners and sponsors, I hope everybody has a fantastic Christmas with their family and the people they care about and enjoy this time. And, Bert, anything you want to touch on?
No, I just want to, I agree. I wish everybody, all of our fans, all of our listeners, that felt kind of weird saying all of our fans, all of our listeners, all of our sponsors, just wish you all have Merry Christmas and a safe Christmas. And we look forward to carrying on with this podcast after the first of the year. Absolutely. Well, Merry Christmas to you, Bert. And I know Merry Christmas to you. He's kind of focused on the hockey stuff right now, but he's still there. He's still there behind the scenes a little bit there. So happy holidays and Merry Christmas to Puka and his family as well. And with that said, I'm Ryan Aho. That is Bert Lehman signing off for the 2021 season. Look forward to talking to y'all right after the first of the year.